Hey, welcome to the Social 333 podcast. I'm your host, Chris Bentley. Today, my guest is Logan Swanson. Logan, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, awesome, man. Thanks for being on. Logan, you go ahead and tell the audience a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Yeah, I'm a professional land investor, is kind of what we call ourselves. We buy and sell land, vacant, nothing improved. If it goes up, I don't want it. We flip, subdivide, all sorts of stuff like that, entitlement deals. And I have a little community for folks that buy and sell here in Dallas called the Dallas-Fort Worth Land Investor Group. I have a podcast called the Land Fixer Podcast where that's all I talk about, buying and selling land, developing land, all sorts of stuff like that.
That's really where the money is, I think, a lot in real estate. And like myself, I get a lot. We were talking about this. We're talking about like how just, we can't, like, I'll get a lead. Somebody's interested in buying like I don't know, some kind of lot. It's like a triangle, right? And it's like one of those paper triangles that you like flip when you're a kid.
Yeah.
I'm old like that. So like, it's something like that. And they want to put a like a trailer on it, or it's just some big lot. And they're like, oh, like I'm really interested in it. Like I want to go take a look at it. And I'm like, yeah, like it's on the corner of, you know, Pearl and Wisconsin, whatever, right? And
Yeah.
then they're like, okay, and it's just kind of like that's where they go, and that's about the last of I hear from them, unless they're like interested, and then they're like, oh, I want the survey, and
Well, you might call it boring, but I would call that simple.
right,
Right. So you're a realtor?
yeah,
Yeah. So is that easier than showing a house?
it's really easy, yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, they're either interested or they're not, right?
Yeah. So I know realtors that only do land, and that's like the benefit for them. It's
Mm.
like, okay, I have good drone footage. I have the survey. I mean, I have everything. You just send it to them in a digital file. I mean, that's why we're able to do land all over the country. Is you can do it digitally.
Wow,
I don't have to go visit properties. I've maybe visited 2% of the properties that I've bought and sold.
wow.
Mhm.
So you do it nationally, like you go all over the all over the nation, like looking at different properties.
Yeah, I mean, I've flipped land in probably, I don't know, 20, 25 states at this point. I wouldn't go international yet.
Right, right.
But there's areas that are preferable, same way like if you're into single family rentals, there's states that are maybe safer or have better regulations and rules for you. And that's the same for us. So we prefer to operate kind of in the South. I call it the Freedom Belt, Texas, Tennessee, North Carolina, South Carolina, Florida, Alabama, Georgia. They tend to have the laws that favor what we do.
Nice. Do you look at just residential? You look at commercial? You look at, mobile home parks? I mean, there's a lot of different things that you could do.
There's a lot. Yeah. I mean, most of it, honestly, most of what we do is unzoned or county zoned. So if we're in a city, typically it's going to be residential, or I've done a few commercial flips, but they're less predictable. Like when you're, have you ever brought commercial land to market?
I had a guy that's really interested in commercial land, and like they wanted to put like a school on there,
Mhm.
and then because it's like everything around that area is already developed, so then I had to get like special permission and try
Yeah.
to see if it's zoned correctly, and like it's a big to do.
Yeah. So if you're working with the city, like they have so many more requirements for what you can do, but they're not bad. I mean, if you become the master of overcoming those issues with the city, you can really hunker down in an area. I mean, we're looking to buy one 40-acre parcel in Lancaster, and take it through the development process, approve it for a single family home community. So it's well worth it. You can make a lot of money doing that. It's a specific type, but for commercial, people don't usually buy commercial land speculatively, and that would be your broadest audience. Otherwise, you have to find someone who wants to buy that land to put a business on, which means you have to find someone that has the capital, has the business idea, the demographics suitable. So it's a really tight buyer pool. So commercial land, you can probably make good money doing it, but you'd have to really understand a market. And we moved to too many markets to specialize in that.
What do you like look at when you're looking at a particular piece of property? Because I know what I look at, and like I know a lot of people don't know what they're looking at, right? Like
Yeah.
I know I get calls all the time, and they're like, "Oh, this is like a great lot," and like all they see is dirt and a fence and maybe a sign, and they have absolutely no idea. And they're like, "Oh, like a circus here, and I'm like, no, like that's not gonna work. Like,
Yeah, I mean, you're trying to put yourself in the shoes of the buyer, the end buyer. So, we have this property in Kentucky. It's 100 acres in Kentucky. It's actually split into two parcels. And you would think it's fully timbered, and a lot of people would look at it and say, hey, this may be ideal for a hunter or something like that. It's not really ideal for a hunter. It's not big enough. I mean, have you ever gone hunting on 100 acres? It's not as big as you'd think. It's not really ideal for a home builder because of the slope. You could put a house there, but it'd be expensive. It is ideal for someone because it's adjacent to or shares a property line with the Daniel Boone National Park Forest Reserve. So somebody who's really into recreation, enjoys that sort of outdoors activity, that's a perfect property for them. So, I mean, what you're doing is you're really trying to understand who the end buyer is, and is this actually an ideal property for whoever that end buyer is. The flexibility, you can either be a specialist in knowing one sort of buyer and continually feeding that buyer over and over again, or kind of being a master of looking at properties and identifying buyers quickly. And that's where I am. I can operate because I can look at a property and understand best and highest use as well as ideal buyer profiles pretty quickly.
I know in my experience, like land sits for a little bit, right? And then you talking about subdivisions is kind of the thing that in my mind is like really the moneymaker, right? So like you can go out and buy a big tract of land, then you're like, okay, well, you have a couple options, and this is my experience.
Hmm.
I'll let you have it, but in my experience, it'll be like a bigger home builder will come in and be like, hey, thanks for finding this land for us, and putting it on MLS. Now we're ready to buy it for 10 or 20% more than what you pay for it, and usually the seller's like, fantastic, here we go, and they're out of the deal. And that's pretty much like a flip of sort. But that's what I've experienced. But let's say like I wanted to go through the whole process. So I'm like, okay, well, like I want to set up, I don't know, like, you know, let's say 30 acres of land, and I'm going to build houses on it. We're going to call it the Chris Street, and we're going to rock and roll, and we're going to build houses, right? What steps? Because a lot of people have that dream of like, hey, we're gonna do it like a big box builder. Like,
Hmm.
tell me kind of like the steps on how to go about doing that from like without getting like too deep in the woods, like
Yeah.
of like buying the lot, you have it now in your hand to, all right, now I got houses on it, and I need to call Chris to sell it.
Yeah. So again, we don't do anything vertical. So I can tell you what I would do. I'll just use this project we're looking at in Lancaster and use that as an example. So this property, we're not intending to build on it. There's kind of two options. One, yeah, you can just go hunt a builder. And if that's the case, then you make your money on the acquisition. This property was brought to us as an off-market property. So the person selling it was in a cash pinch, just like most people are going to make money on like a home flip or a home wholesale. Like they find somebody who needs cash quick for a property. So this property was put under contract for $675,000. And its market value without us touching it would be around 1.5 million, maybe 1.7 million. Now, that's with us not doing any of the entitlement process. What folks don't realize is a lot of the work that goes into building a community is just done on paper. It's permits, it's applications, it's surveyors, it's engineers, it's due diligence to ensure that you have water capacity, sewer capacity, electric capacity, school capacity. All these things come into play. So you can actually make a lot of money buying that property and then just going through the entitlement process. So you never pick up a shovel. So what you're going to do is you're going to get in touch with the planning and zoning department, and you're going to say, hey, I have this property. How small can I make the lots? That's usually the question you're going to ask. And most of them are going to be zoned, say R4 or R5 or whatever. And if you say R5, you may be allowed to put 5 homes per acre. Okay. So then you take that information, you take it to a civil engineer, and you say, hey, draw me an ideal layout for a community. Most of the times that ideal layout is going to maximize the number of lots that you can have in there and minimize the amount of roads, because those are like the costs that you're trying to outweigh. So through that process, you can identify an ideal layout for the community. You can take that to the city. The city's going to have you fill, it's a ton of paperwork. Submit it all to the city, go through the entire process. And once you get the approval and it's shovel ready with paper lots, you can then sell that to a builder. and say, hey, you can start work tomorrow. That's where Lennar Homes, a lot of the big builders like to come in, because a lot of that work is speculative. You can go through that entire process, hire surveyors, civil engineers, et cetera, take it to the city, and the city could just say no. Or if you have to go through a zoning change, it may have to go to a public vote, and they could just say no. But you can add hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars to the value of a property without picking up a shovel. So the guys that are doing this full time, that are really killing it and are pretty quiet, that's what they're doing.
They just go through the whole process. Like
Yeah.
they get everything done, and they're like, okay, well, like, here's the project. Here you go.
Yeah, and if you think about it from a builder's perspective too, I mean, their job is to build. Oftentimes they have a development wing out of necessity because there's not enough communities for them to build as many homes as they want, to grow at the rate that they want. So if they're excellent at building, that allows them to do what they want. They want to do building. So just give them the land prepared for them to build.
Nice. Talk to me about like a little bit about like the hidden gems or things that you've
Mhm.
kind of seen in the market that like that somebody maybe like overlooks. Like, I don't want to steal your thunder. Obviously, if you got something that you have up your sleeve and a nugget, like I don't want to give that out. But like, what is it that somebody maybe just so, like somebody in the audience that's just an entrepreneur or business
Mhm.
owner, and he's like, he or she is like, hey, like I'm gonna go invest in some real estate today, and like I'm gonna make a fortune. Like you can laugh, but like there's a lot of people that I met that are like that. They just like it's Sunday or Saturday night, they got nothing to do. They don't want to go to the bar, or they're with a significant other. They don't go to bars anymore or whatever, right? And they just sit at home and they look at land all day
Yeah.
or all night, and
Mhm.
then they're like, "Oh, like I'm really interested in this lot," and they drive to it, and they're like, "It's dirt. It's by this road. And, it has utilities, survey, all that stuff." And then they're like, "Okay, well, like now what?" Right?
Yeah, so riches, it is possible, but if you are looking at property that's already on market, or, landowners seeking a retail value, the likelihood of you finding something there is much smaller than trying to find deals off market. So that's really where you make your money, especially in the beginning. Say, like, if you started with a bunch of money, and you had the ability to just go buy land retail, hire civil engineers, nothing scrappy, just go the professional route. Then yeah, I mean, you can make a lot of money just becoming a developer like that. But for most people in that scenario, they're going to probably have to find land off market. And where I started was in the middle of nowhere. Um, the way that I guess, what's the best way to put it? So land oftentimes is operating in a low efficient market. Like, you as a realtor, say I brought to you $100,000 vacant piece of land, and I said, hey, I want you to list this. It's probably gonna be hard to sell. It might sit on market for 2 years. You might have to show the property to dozens and dozens of people. And I'm not gonna make a lot of money on it, so I'm really gonna try to haggle with you and give you a lower commission. I mean, you're probably just gonna say no. This isn't worth my time. The average house in DFW is what, 450,000 or something. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So you would, it's better for you to list a single house than 4 properties at $100,000.
Right.
Um, so it's an inefficient market. So if somebody has that property, it's not uncommon for them to have already tried to list it and sell it at a retail value, and were unsuccessful. So when someone like me comes in and says, hey, I'll buy this property from you for $50,000 and I'll pay cash, we'll close in 2 weeks. You don't got to worry about it. I'll do all the due diligence. And then I, who have a company suitable for marketing land and having relationships with agents and brokers that specialize in land and have the subscriptions to all the land selling websites, et cetera, well, I might be able to sell that property for $100,000 in 6 months or 9 months. And then my returns are excellent. I mean, that's like a home return. I mean, I know people who are flipping homes and making less per home that they like flip and rehab, as opposed for me spending $50,000 and then doubling my money. That's not an uncommon margin. And in fact, the more inefficient, meaning the lower value property, you tend to get higher margins. Like, when I started my business, my favorite properties, I was buying anywhere between $1,000 and $5,000 for like a half acre lot, or up to an acre lot in these like lake communities, lake adjacent communities. And I'd sell them for $15,000 to $20,000. That's a, low investment, high reward scenario. It only takes a few of those a year to dramatically change your lifestyle. And that's where I thrived. So, like, if you're starting, go find the most inefficient market possible. West Texas. I've done hundreds of deals in West Texas, just desert squares, 5, 10, 20 acre lots. But I learned I learned who the buyers were, what they were looking for. I brought it to them affordably. And, something we'll probably get into is I offer owner financing. And that's really the key to making a lot of money in land and developing something along the lines of a passive income stream.
Yeah, go into that because I was about to ask you about like JV or private equity. Like, how does it work with land? Like, most of the people that I've done land deals, they just have cash,
Mm-hmm.
or it's somebody that like has absolutely no idea about anything, and they're trying to do like like 1% down or something.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, like land doesn't work like that. But yeah, like talk to me about a little bit about that. Like, how does the financing work, and like what do you offer?
It's I mean, the biggest issue, right? So, the ideal situation is not having to owner finance often. Um, so the way that I guess the first step is I'm going to go try to command a cash buyer. That typically means being either the best property on market or the most affordable property on market. So oftentimes I'm trying to buy at what I would say is 40 or 50% of retail and trying to sell it like 80 or 90. So like that's how you attract the cash buyer. If there's only one cash buyer in the market, you got to be the cheapest one or one of the most affordable ones to get their money. If that's not available or you are not willing to settle for a discounted price for your property, then owner financing is very common in land. It's definitely much more common in land than it is in the single family industry. So what you'd probably see is um, higher interest rates. Like when I owner finance something, I'm usually trying to get 10 to 20% down on a property with anywhere between a 10 and 14% interest rate. That's pretty standard. Um, and the goal is to structure my acquisition to be roughly paid off within a 3 to 6 month period if I owner finance it, which means I typically owner finance the more affordable lots that I buy. So if I buy them well below what I would consider a retail value, or subdivision communities, which are not like when I say subdivision, I think a lot of folks are thinking like the quarter acre single family lots. What we often do is what I would call like ranchette style subdivision. So I'll go buy 100 acres, 200, 300. I'm trying to do like thousands of acre subdivisions like this. And then you cut them into 10 acre parcels or 20 acre parcels. And you sell those usually at like a mix of roughly a quarter to a third cash sales and then the rest on owner finance. And between those cash sales and the down payments, you usually cover all of your costs. And you can generate portfolios that are paying out hundreds of thousands of dollars for years to come, and it's pure profit. You no longer have sunk costs. But if you're attracting outside money or bank money or JV money or hard money, things like that, then you have to have a lot of confidence that you can sell that property cash. Or like if you really want to get into it, there are note buyers. So you can acquire a property, sell it on a note, collect 20% down, and then take it to somebody who's mostly just trying to make a 16% return on anything. So they'll buy that note, which is a very secure note. Most states, if somebody defaults, they stop paying, you just still own the property and then you go sell it again. So you can coordinate it so that you sell the property on owner financing and then bring it to a note buyer all at the same closing table and still walk away with cash, but it's usually going to be around like 75% of what the sale price is.
Talk to me about subdividing. That's something that I always wanted to get into. Like somebody buys a big lot,
Mm-hmm.
and like just like you said, you want to subdivide it. Like, what is the process? Do you have to go to the city? Like, what is it that you have to do?
Well, ideally, you just want to stay away from the city.
Okay.
The most favorable rules are going to be in the county. So I would not suggest anyone go from no real estate experience to trying to do like a single family home subdivision in Dallas. That would be tough. I mean, good chance you'll get burned doing that. But if you go out into the county, and all counties are different, so this is, I guess, where I would start. All states are different and all counties are different. But Texas is one of the best because there's a state law in Texas. I'm not an attorney. This is not legal advice.
Mhm.
But there's a state law in Texas that says you can subdivide your property down to 10-acre lots without any county approval process, as long as there is county road access to that lot. Which means I could, if I identify an ideal property, say it's 40 acres of land that's at an intersection of roads, And I could subdivide this down to 10-acre lots, and all of those lots would have county road frontage. All I would have to do is call a surveyor, and that surveyor would come out. He would survey it. He'd issue me meets and bounds, and I would be able to sell those properties. I'd call the planning and zoning department, the central appraisal district, and get new APNs or parcel numbers issued for those lots, and I could sell them. And that's it. There's no red tape. There's no shenanigans. There's no making sure anything. That's it. Just call a surveyor. State law.
Wow.
The caveat is you can't do any improvements in order to do that. So if you do need to put in a road, or you want to run power, or any sort of improvements to the property, then you are subject to county rules. Now, oftentimes county rules at that point, like, I don't know if you've dealt with county officials in Texas. My first subdivision, I looked up the precincts in the county, and I found out who the county commissioner was in that precinct, and I went to his official page on the county, and I was trying to find his phone number so I could like ask him about the process. And it listed his home number, his cell phone number, and then his barn phone number. And they said you should probably call the barn phone number to get a hold of him.
In the barn.
In the barn, yeah.
Wow.
So that's what I called. I called the barn number. I talked to him on the barn. He said, yeah, no problem. Just submit the plat to our council meeting. And they stamped it. There's no process. That was the whole process. I emailed them the plan. They said it's exempt from any of their requirements, and we were able to subdivide it. We
Off and running.
Yeah, we cut 11 lots out of that property.
Wow. Talk to me about the risk side of it, because I know some people are probably watching this and they're like, okay, well, like now we're gonna go like, do some land stuff, and we're gonna go out and like, be prospectors and Jed Clampett style, and we're gonna go out and like go get it, especially here in Texas. Wear the hat and the boots and go out and like get me some land, right? So, talk to me about like some of the risks that people could experience if they went out and just purchased some land.
Yeah, there's a lot of them. A lot of them are very specific to the region and the jurisdiction you're in. But most of the time, what you're looking for is kind of, again, identifying the end buyer. Most land transactions that I've been a part of, it's either been a recreational lot where all you were really concerned about was legal access to the property, or residential, which means if someone's going to go build a home there, there's some common things that they're going to be looking for. They're going to make sure, they can't be in a floodplain. I mean, that's a huge one in Texas. You can't build in a floodplain. You definitely can't put a septic system in the floodplain most of the time. There are exceptions. But then it's just standard utilities. Is there access to water? If there is no access to water, is there actually the ability to put a well in? There's a lot of areas in Texas. I've been lucky enough to buy land where there's just no way to put a well and there's no access to water. So, yeah, utilities first, floodplain, access, and then it's zoning. If the ideal use is not zoned, if the property is not zoned for the ideal use, then you're gonna have a hard time selling it to that person, or you have to go through a zoning change. But it usually almost always comes down to just ensuring that you're buying it at the right price. So it's almost always a game of comps, and that's the challenge, because you can take. This is all I do. I mean, this is a full-time profession. It's just learning how to comp land. In fact, I don't know if I could really pay someone under $200,000 to do it well enough to like be on staff.
Wow.
Because you look at a property, land is slower, right? So most of the time we're trying to flip properties in 6 to 9 months, which means we need to really carefully identify what the retail value is and then try to sneak up under it a little bit because we want to move it quickly. So if you ever tried this, drop a pin on a property, an hour and a half, 2 hours from DFW. In Texas, it's a non-disclosure state. So you have a hard time getting an idea of what comps are at all to begin with, if it didn't happen on the MLS. Then you kind of have to guess. Oftentimes properties aren't apple to apple. This one's got slope, this one's flat, this one's cleared, this one has water, this one doesn't have water, this one has power, this one has a view, this one doesn't have a view, this one's 20 minutes closer to a Walmart, this one, all these things have to come into play when you're really trying to establish the retail value of a property. And if you do that wrong and you buy too high and your margin's too thin, then you start holding on and hoping that you can command this retail value down the road. And in the meantime, you're not getting capital back into your business. You can't redeploy capital. Or God forbid you have a loan, like you took a loan out to secure this property to flip. So then you're just paying interest while it sits on market,
Property tax.
property tax. Luckily, that's typically pretty light in our industry. Undeveloped land is usually affordable, but yeah, those things eat you up.
Mm.
And when you're looking at a slow market, like the period before the election was very slow.
Yep.
We had a lot of property that just wasn't moving. We were just sitting there and calling our partners and beating them up and trying to get them to sell the property. And it's, oh, no one's buying land right now. So yeah, you can get your lunch eaten if you're if you comp it wrong, or you're buying land with too thin a margin, and then you go into a slow period.
Mm-hmm. Or the economy goes upside down.
Yep.
Like I've kind of running into that right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean that's what we're looking at with the subdivision in Lancaster. Is if we actually have an A to B contract and we have a B to C contract with a developer, but builders are notorious for just walking away from contracts when the market shifts, and we're in a situation where that market could shift.
Mm-hmm.
So if we spend all this money on this property, it'll still be safe, but it'll be slow. We're buying it well below market value, but if it takes us 3 years to sell, it's a lot of lost opportunity for that capital.
I agree. Talk to us about the big lot that you have, or the sale that you had, that 320-acre lot.
Mhm.
Talk about that a little bit. I know that's a fun story.
It's an interesting deal. Yeah. So this the West Texas one.
Mhm.
Yeah. So there's this county, Brewster County, Texas. West Texas, huge county. That's where the Big Bend National Park is. So that's where a lot of people, if anyone goes down there, that's usually why they're going down there for a little vacation. Very rough terrain, but this is really one of the areas that I started. When I started buying land, this was in 2018, and I was like what you were describing. Somebody was just sitting on their sofa one night trying to change their life. I was working in construction. I was moonlighting at a restaurant in downtown Dallas, working all the time, always behind on bills, never seeing my kids, never going on vacation with my wife. Everything was just kind of like making me feel stuck. So yeah, I took this course, and this guy suggested going to buy land in West Texas. I was like, this is nuts. Who, if I go and buy it, who the hell am I going to sell it to? That was my first thought. But I did. I started buying land out there around $70 to $80 an acre. And then selling it for around $250 to $300 an acre. And I'd oftentimes have to owner finance it. But I was building up a big note portfolio. I'd buy a property, and between the down payment and the first 3 months of payments, I was in profit. And most of those were $99 a month payments, but you get 10 of those, 20 of those, 30 of those. We got up to, I think our note collection portfolio ever was like 120 notes.
Wow.
But none of them were below $100.
Mhm.
So, I mean, that was a game changer. I was paycheck to paycheck, man. I had nothing. So, I stuck around in that area. This market was really working for me. So I started getting more aggressive, buying bigger and bigger lots. Went from 5 to 10 to 20 to 50 to 100-acre lots. And then my big swing was like, all right, I want to buy a square. And a square is 640 acres. It's a mile by a mile. And so I started mailing all these squares. And I didn't get a square, but I got a half a square. And this guy had a 320-acre parcel. Storied history with it. His dad used to take him out there when he was a kid. This is an old man. And he loved the property, and he held on to it. And he just realized about the time that I got in contact with him that he's never going to go back out there. And he doesn't have any kids, so he doesn't have anyone to hand it off to. And so I negotiated with him. I said, hey, I think I offered him like $50,000. He said, oh, that seems a little low to me. And I said, all right, let's see what I can do. Called him back the next day. I said, all right. I talked to my broker. He said I could do $65,000. He said, okay, we'll take it. The craziest part, it took 7 months to close the acquisition of this property. Not because there was any complications, but because there's one title company in that county.
Mm.
And that title company is operated by a mom and her daughter. And because of investors like me, they were trying to do hundreds of transactions of all these tiny little properties. And we were just in standard queue. It took almost 6 months to close. Finally, I bought the property, big sigh of relief, brought it to market. And this thing went under contract 3 times. And they ended up backing out because the first person was like, oh, I want to put a glamping. The features of the property were quite unique. It was like a cliff. It was like a steady increase and then a steep drop off. So the views were incredible. And I was like, this is perfect for someone who's going to Airbnb or whatever. And So yeah, I went under contract a few times. People couldn't get it to. I mean, you couldn't really get water out there. I don't know how you could have any sort of Airbnb, but people were doing it. They tote water in. Um, Anyways, finally, we got sick of it. We had sent a drone guy out there who had gotten some drone footage, and it was just terrible. He actually only kind of got the property because he didn't know where he was trying to get footage, and so I needed a trip. And I told my wife, like, "Hey, I'm gonna head out there. I'm just gonna get in my car and drive out there and take my own drone footage." And a 16-hour drive out there, and it was a cool experience. I had a bunch of other friends who do what I do, so I stopped and took drone footage at a bunch of different properties all over. Really cool, off the grid, way out there properties. And finally, I get to mine, and it was like one of the few nights that it rains. It's like big storms, clouds. It's like it's actually known for having the prettiest night sky in the world, potentially.
Wow.
I think. But I get out there, run the drone. And I'm like, oh, I need to get drone footage from the very peak of this. Like, it's almost a mountain. I don't know what you'd call it, cliff face. And there's fences in such a way that you can't really go around without crossing into the neighbor's territory. And they're not, they're trigger happy folks out there. So I didn't want to do that. And so I scaled it, and I had a gun and my drone and water. So I kind of didn't have hands. And I get all the way to the top and fly my drone around again and get the footage. And I realized, like, oh man, I ran out of water. I'm like dehydrated. It's the middle of summer. It was like 110 degrees out there. I could have screamed. No one would have heard me. My cell phone wasn't working. And I'm looking at this steep cliff down, and everything out there is trying to kill you. So it's just nothing but cacti and sharp rock, and the rocks all sliding underneath my feet. And
Scorpions.
Yeah, scorpions. I mean, everything out there.
Rattlesnakes,
It's
yeah.
miserable. So I was like, this is not good. So I decided I was going to try to like head down the less steep side, and I ran into so I like walked another 30 minutes down, ran into it, had to climb back up, and then I had to scale down this thing, slipping and sliding the entire time. Finally get to the bottom, and this is like actually the best part of the story is I was about to just drive off because I was so dehydrated, I had nothing to drink. But the last thing I had to do there was knock a for sale sign into the ground. And it's all rock. So I like couldn't even find a spot. I was like going around, sweat pouring down my face. And I was like, why am I even putting this here? No one's going to see. I'm like, I'm miles off of the road. There's only like 2 paved roads in the entire county. No one's going to see this stupid for sale sign. But I stuck to it. Finally got it pounded into the ground, tore out of there. I almost couldn't get in or out because there's no real roads. It was kind of a crazy thing. But sure enough, I got all the way back to Dallas, and that for sale sign sold the property. The guy who owned the property just to the west of it, he offered full price on it. It was the first 6-figure profit I made.
Wow.
And yeah, so like at a critical time in my business too, because like desperately needed that cash. Things were slow. I had kind of scaled, so I had too many employees, and I was like, if I don't get this money, like I don't know what I'm gonna do.
I'm gonna go bust. Yeah.
So
That's really cool.
uh-huh.
I bet you were like cussing on the way, like all the way through the whole thing.
Yeah, the entire thing. It was like, it was no joke. Like I was sitting out there, and when I was like going down that cliff face that was real steep and the rock was sliding out from under me, I'm like, if I fall and like break my leg, I'm done. I don't know what I would do. It's another mile to my truck. That whole thing was a miserable, hellish walk. And then like I'm almost got stuck coming in. How the hell am I going to get out? Yeah, it was one of those deals that I think you need to go through moments like that in your life to really feel like, one, live a little, especially in land. Like I was telling you, land can be exciting if you actually go to properties, but most of the time I don't ever go to the properties. So it was like, I needed that adventure, and it worked out really well. So it was one of my favorite stories.
Nice. Logan, where can somebody find you if they were interested in getting more information, or they had a lot to sell or something like that? Where would they go to go find you?
Yeah. So, my podcast is the Land Fixer Podcast. You can email me at thelandfixer@gmail.com. If you're local to Dallas-Fort Worth, we do have a land investor group. You can find us on Facebook, DFW Land Investor Group. We have meetups every week. I host a seminar once a month. I always bring in a guest speaker who tells us about some cool niche aspect of land investing where they've made millions. Yeah, so
Nice.
that's why.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being on the show. Thanks for coming out.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
That went
absolutely.
fast.
Awesome.